First up is Chen Yu, and yeah, I think this looks really good. I think this is the right idea for the kind of character that would work for this class. It's built of simple shapes, and you'll notice the lines are put in to help align it with the side pose, so that you know the eye is in the same place as the eye, and the top of the shoulder, and everything will line up in the front and side view. So that's the correct way to do it, and that really works well. I think the one area I think could use more attention is the face. I think what you might want to do is do maybe a few more sketches of the face, maybe do a 3/4 view. This face design is very two-dimensional. I mean, obviously you can see some of the shape from the side, which is good, but that, the eye and the area around the eye is not sort of well explained of what that's going to look like. So I think just kind of fleshing out the face design, and while I think you could get away with this kind of hair, I think it'll be all right. But I think just more thought in the face. So maybe do a close-up of the face and do a 3/4 view of the face to, give you the information you need to be able to model this in 3D well. But overall, this is a good design. Okay, next up is Tia, and we've got kind of an alien character here, which I think is a good idea. In principle, I think that this design deserves a little bit more time and attention to flesh it out. It's kind of a stick man right now, like the arms are just sort of parallel lines, and what you want to do is get sort of a shoulder shape, a bicep shape. Not to say that it has to be sort of muscly, but just to have clear shapes that separate the different parts of the body, and the same with the legs. Again, just sort of two nearly parallel lines, and then the feet should be facing forward, not kind of down and out to the side. They should be flat on the ground facing forward. And I think it would be good for you to do, have the drawing side by side and put those guidelines in at the top of the head and where the waist is, and the knee and the legs and the feet. There's a little bit more shape to this one, which is good. You get a little bit of shape on the body, and a little bit more in the legs, but I think you could take that further. And again, feet flat on the ground, facing forward, and give a little more shape to the feet as well. One thing to know is that even if the eye sockets and the eyelids don't form a spherical shapes, the eyeballs should be a spherical shape. So you'll want to consider, how big the eyeballs are in the head, and then kind of shape the eyelids or the, whatever the eye sockets around those spherical eyeballs. So don't make eyeballs that are not spherical. The eyes are always a sphere, but the shape around it can be not a sphere. Like the lids, they can be whatever shape you want. So yeah, I would say do another pass at this, trying to give the body more shape, a little more of a sense of anatomy, of muscle and bone, and the different kind of areas of the body. And it might help you to look at some anatomy photos. Next up is Maddie, and yeah, I think this looks good. You've got the basic shapes in there. The clothing is interesting. It looks like you have some asymmetrical stuff going on with the clothes, which is fine. Normally I would do the legs facing forward and the feet facing forward, and you've got them kind of at an angle pointing out to the side, so I'd get them kind of flat on the ground facing forward, sort of an orthographic view of the character. Rather than kind of seeing the feet at an angle. And the knees seem to be, in your drawing, kind of pointed out to the side, and we want the knees kind of facing forward. It has to do with how we're going to connect it to the rig. You don't want to have to bend the legs out usually. It's possible, but it's usually I recommend having the legs parallel and facing forward. And yeah, again, good having those guidelines in to make sure everything matches front and side. I think, yeah, this looks good. I think the one area, the facial design has a kind of a very 2D look, and I think you could use more information that will help you create a 3D model of the head and face. So I would recommend doing a close-up sketch of the face and try doing a 3/4 view of that just to see what it could look like at different angles. I mean, the nose and mouth are really just sort of suggested, and I would argue the eyes as well. So really getting into the detail there, kind of thinking about how the forehead comes down into the nose, the eye sockets, and how all that kind of comes together in a 3D shape will help you later on when you go to model it. So do a close-up of the head and a 3/4 view of the head and face, and that'll really benefit you later. This is Cindy, and yeah, this is looking really good. I like that you've done, it's funny because the last couple I was talking about doing a 3/4 view of the face, and you've done that. It's nice to see some color work as well. I really think you've really thought through the clothing in a very detailed way, down to the stitches and how things kind of come together here, and the different pieces and how you've color coded it, where you can still see the body structure and the clothing. So I think you've done a really nice job there. The way, just to keep these things simple, I tend to recommend just modeling what you see. So I would tend to say, like, for example, you can model the pants, the boots, the shirt, but you don't have to do like the chest and legs underneath it. Obviously, you would probably do the whole arms and hands as one continuous piece. Yeah, and I think that face has a lot of character to it and some good shapes going on. I think that you're a little bit off kind of front and side as far as the scale here, so you might want to do another pass at that and kind of putting in guidelines for kind of the top and bottom of the nose, where the lips and chin hit and those kinds of things, and make sure, because to me it looks a little bit off. Like if I say, like, here's the top of the nose and here's the bottom of the nose. Well, maybe it's closer than I think. What about the chin and the mouth? I guess it's a little better than I thought. Yeah, I guess that lines up well. It's just somehow this looks smaller than that one. I think maybe it needs to be wider. Is problem. Maybe it's lined up top to bottom, but it just needs to be a little wider. This looks like it's slightly at an angle, so you'll probably want to straighten that out. You could do that in Photoshop. This as well. Yeah, it seems like where you can see kind of going through that side of his head. Yeah, and that's a little bit at an angle. So try to straighten those out a little bit. Just kind of rotate them in Photoshop a little bit to get those straight. And yeah, maybe make this a little wider, because somehow it doesn't seem to be the same scale as the side view to me. Whereas that looks really proportional in this view. Anyways, really good design. So I think straightening them out, maybe some adjustments on the head size, see if you like that a little better. Okay, this is Hend, and I think this character is appealing right from the start. I think that I tend to like to avoid long dresses or skirts or long hair, those kinds of things, because to do a long dress, for example, and have it move well and believably, you need to do a cloth simulation, and that's really beyond the scope of this class. There's just no time for it. But maybe you could do a modified version where it's a shorter skirt and we see the character's legs somehow, and so then you don't have as much trouble on the rigging and getting it to move believably, because it doesn't need to kind of drape and swing. And then there's the same issue with the hair. You might want to give her a little bit of a haircut. I think that the proportions are cartoonish, which is fine. It's got this very long neck, and I think they sort of feel a little bit like short arms, but I guess they're okay, but they look a bit short to me. I think the hands could use a little bit more definition and work, and you might want to do a detailed sketch of what the hands are going to look like. Also, the way the head is drawn, it's kind of drawn at an angle where the head looks like it's rotated a little bit, and we want to make sure the head's facing straight on. And I think you need to do additional drawings of the head, because this is a very 2D kind of drawing, and I don't think it gives enough information of what the head will look like in 3 dimensions. I think you could give the body a little bit more shape here. It's very kind of linear, flat in the front. Also, the feet should be flat on the ground, facing forward. And again, that eye is like, I can't really imagine when I would be faced to do that in 3D, how I'm going to reconcile how it looks from the front and the side. It's almost the same drawing on the front and the side. And I just think you really need to do a detailed drawing of the head and figure out sort of where that eye begins and ends, and where the mouth begins and ends, and all that stuff. It's a real 2D style that would be difficult to translate into 3D, I think. So I think more sketches of the head, probably a 3/4 view of the head, close up. Either change the outfit altogether, or give it a shorter dress, and then shorter hair, just so we don't have to deal with the kind of rigging challenges that are going to come with that. And yeah, the color looks nice. And we'll make sure, I think you already had it, but yeah, for the modeling thing, you want the arms out to the side. So yeah, I think do another pass of this, and definitely kind of a little bit more work on the head than the face. This is Stephanie, and yeah, this is got a lot of personality to it, this character. You feel like you kind of have a sense of who this character is, which is good. I think that you'll model the mouth in a neutral pose, and the same with the eyebrows. So you don't want to have that kind of you just give the eyebrows and the mouth a more neutral position for the design. The arms are quite short, and I understand that's kind of the cartoony style of the character, but at the same time you'll have to consider that that's going to limit many of the things that this character can do. With a large head and short arms, she couldn't scratch the top of her head, for example, or things like, I don't know, climbing a ladder might be difficult because it'll be hard for her long arms to be long enough to get in the way of body. So I would consider lengthening the arms at least some. The feet are kind of pointed in right now. They should be flat on the ground and facing forward. Also here, from here, flat on the ground, not at an angle like that. And I think a little bit more shaping to the legs, a little bit more of a sense of where the thigh ends and the knee begins, and then the calf begins, because we kind of lose it all in there. So I think you could spend a little more time on the shape of the legs, and that'll benefit you later. And I think the eyes, they're very stylized, and that also might be challenging to translate to 3D. So I would recommend doing, like I've said with many others, some additional drawings of the face and head from different angles to get a real sense of what that will look like in 3 dimensions. But I think what you have going for you is there's a lot of personality here, and I think that's coming through. This is Yu, and yeah, I mean, looking at this, it looks like Goku to me, and by that I mean this character a bit much, so I might try to go for something a little more original. Also, the drawing really needs work. It's so sketchy, and the feet are kind of out of proportion, and it's so sketchy you don't get a clear sense of line and shape. And I think maybe as a first pass this would be okay, but I think you need to do a cleaned up version. And this is kind of just shoddy. If you don't have room on your paper, you need to draw it again in the correct size that fits your paper, or get a bigger sheet of paper, but just taping on a piece is, I don't know, doesn't look, and it's just not a clean drawing where you can clearly see the forms and shapes. Also, we want the legs, feet facing forwards, legs parallel, and again, try to get a clear shoulder shape, a clear, a little bit more sense of bicep and that stuff. So I would, altogether just take another pass at this. Maybe try to come up with something a little bit more original, because it does seem a little bit, to me, look too much like that Goku character, or really taking its style from that. And frankly, if you were going to do that, I would rather you just use images that other people have drawn of that character, because then at least you'll start with a better design. So this needs some more work. I think, take another pass at this. Okay, this is Nicole, and I like that it's got some personality to it, some kind of original style. I think for the sake of modeling, you're going to want the legs. It looks like the legs are kind of pointed out to the side. You want the legs the legs facing forward, feet facing forward, flat on the ground. The palms facing the ground and straight out to the side. What can be helpful is a view of the hands from above. So a more detailed drawing of the hands would really benefit this. And I think that this looks good. You might want to go a little bigger on the boots. Maybe look at some photo reference to help you with some of the detail and proportions on those. The proportions on the head are, obviously it's very cartoony, but it's a bit out there. You might want to give her a little bit more of a chin and maybe a little bit more of a forehead, because right now her face is kind of crowding, and even here it kind of looks like she has more of a forehead than on the side. And then on the arms, you've got a little bit of shape to them, but maybe a little bit more of a sense of where the elbow is, where the forearm begins and ends, where the bicep begins and ends. Just a little bit more shape and not just kind of these big thick lines. And again, indicate the knee here on the legs, make sure they're facing forward. This is Kareem, and this is good. This is the right idea for this class. This has a lot of what I've been talking about with some of the other ones, where there's sort of a clear shoulder shape and clear shapes defining elbow and wrist and so forth, and different the knees, the different parts of the body. I like the look of how the pant leg kind of overlaps the shoes and all that, but generally want the legs to be parallel and feet facing forward. And feet flat on the ground. So that's a big thing I would change, at least in the front view. And I think like others, it wouldn't hurt for you to do a detailed drawing of the head, 3/4 view, just to get a better idea of what it looks like in 3 dimensions. I think overall this looks good. Another thing that might help you is a drawing of the hand from above. Or even if you prefer using a photograph of a hand, that can be fine, but just something that will help guide your modeling of the hand can be really helpful. This looks good. This is Michelle, and I think conceptually it's okay, and I think that there's some funniness with the proportions. I like the arms just look a little odd and some of the shapes, so you might look at some photo reference for getting the proportions right. I think part of what I'm looking at, is this arm shorter than that one. Maybe that should just fit it on the sheet that happened. And I think you should have some lines kind of not just as an outline, but on the some interior detail, like defining the knee or the shoulder, where the bicep ends, and where some of the elbow shapes. So I might get some good photo reference to help you fix the proportions and just get some more detail in the body. Yeah, and the arms are out to the side, so often people just put like a circle to sort of indicate where the shoulder is. Because I don't think this is going to give you that much more information, but this looks okay. I think, again, maybe a little bit more indication of the knee, and maybe a little bit more detail around the ankle and the boot. But again, I think, photo reference is your friend, so get some more photo reference, and I think you could kind of do a better job with the anatomy, and then also make sure these things are matching front and side, that the proportions are the same, because it's hard to tell from here, but you might, at a quick glance, but you might want to put in those sort of horizontal guidelines at key points in the body to see if everything's matching up front and side. This is Ahmad, and yeah, I think as a basic idea, this one is good. There are a few things to avoid. Any kind of long dangling kind of string type things are something to avoid, and also this is a bit long and drapey to have to deal with, so you might try to shorten those things. We want arms out to side more. You can do the arms at a diagonal as well, but you don't want them by their side. So, what they call a T pose, we want the arms out to the side. And then legs parallel, feet flat on the ground. Also, you need a side view, and so you might want to put in some horizontal guidelines to make sure, the top of the head, the nose, the eyes, bottom of the chin, shoulders, waist, all these things line up in the front and the side view. So I think you should draw this again with a little more detail and kind of body shape to it. For example, the legs don't have much shape, so trying to define the knee and some of the other areas, and also T-pose, and make sure you have the side view that matches up proportionally. So yeah, so keep going on this one. Okay, this is Hayden, and yeah, it's an interesting character. It definitely has some personality to it, some uniqueness. It looks a little different, the front and back to the side view. I think it's going to be, again, important to put in those guidelines, which is horizontal lines on the various kind of landmarks along the body to make sure they match up front and side. Even if front and back, while very close, don't necessarily match up perfectly, although actually it's probably fine, but again, put in those guidelines to just check. Another thing is you want, maybe more of an indication of the knee on the front. I like that you have that on the back. And make sure the feet are facing forward, feet flat on the ground, palms facing down. Might help you to have like an additional sketch of the hand and fingers from above to help with the model. And yeah, and I think maybe just be a little cleaned up here. Especially the legs are pretty sketchy right now, so I think you could get clear shapes to help guide you when you're doing the model. But overall, I think it's all right. I think it's it's got a lot of personality to it, and that carries it away. The ear is a little odd how high up the top is. It makes it look a little strange, but like sort of passable since it's cartoony concept. So yeah, just I think you clean this up, check that the proportions match front and side, feet flat on the ground facing forward, and yeah, so do another pass at that. This is Bohan, otherwise known as Bob, and yeah, this looks really good. I think, yeah, obviously, as I've mentioned on a few of the other ones, you've got the clear guidelines to make sure the proportions match. Very, very clear shapes defining the different kind of body parts. That comes across really well. And yeah, just good strong shapes. I think that's gonna make it a lot easier to model, because it's so clear. I find the feet to be a little bit flat and skinny, but maybe that's the stylized thing you're going for, but it's a bit extreme when compared to the rest of the character. For example, his hands are a little bit more substantial and fleshy, so you might want to give the feet a little bit more mass. But really good body shapes, and I think you may want to do a detail of the head. Maybe try doing a drawing in a 3/4 view just to get a better sense of what those shapes looks like in 3 dimensions. And maybe you do have this sort of hand drawing from the top, but maybe the fingers seem to be a little bit curled, and we want them to be a little bit more straightened out when we're modeling. So maybe do a little hand study from above where the hand is straightened out. But yeah, this is a strong design with strong shapes, and this should serve you well.